Okay, so finally, after many sessions of working with the data and uh, collecting data and analyzing them and going through many steps in the in R and in our social network, we have uh, somehow we have the results and we have analyzed the results. Some of them have been done in the class, and some of them are new to us, all of you actually. And today I gonna go to very briefly and quickly summarize what we did before and what the most important points of the study was, and then what we got from our data, the data that we collected. And at the end, I will have a small table that compares what we found and what Stossel found in the study to see if they are comparable or not.
Yeah, and one word to the others. So
Yes.
don't see this now as a lecture. So you lean back and until it's finished, you just interrupt, ask questions, comments, right?
Yes,
Like
yes,
as we would do in a room.
exactly. I mean, even if you don't, I also have some questions that you have to answer. So please listen carefully, because sometimes, the questions just pop up. Okay. So sorry, let me move the stuff here to see the slide. Okay. What was the goal of the study? I mean, what Stoss has said that is the goal of the study. She said immigrants in other countries usually have two networks, one network in the home country and one network in the host country. And she wanted to see how the dynamics of these two networks are related to a language shifting and language maintenance. So she basically gave each person one score, which was the language shifting score. And she said, okay, I want to know if people, based on the structure of their two networks that they have different linguistic behaviors in terms of language shifting and maintenance. So uh, first, she defined language shifting and maintenance based on the frequency of using L1 in different domains of their everyday life. So what is domain here on the right side? She said, okay, people in their whole life have different domains. And she worked on more domains than us because she had church and family of family in Germany and family at home, but we have four. We don't have those ones because in the family we also know if by family, because we also ask the relationship between the person and the ego and the alters. By the answers, we know if the family that that person is mentioning is in Germany or in the home, and so we could recognize them by less questions, because if you remember, we had this limitation of the number of questions in our survey, in the Lime survey, so we had to limit the number of questions, and because of this, we had to do more work, but to basically have less questions. So we had these four domains of everyday life, family. I mean, what language do you speak with the different members of your family, with people at work, with your neighbors, and with other people? And based on the number of languages that each person uses in each domain, we calculated, and this study basically calculated a shifting score, which was the number of non-L1 languages. Because, I mean, here one difference between our study and Stoss's study is that for Stossel, English was L2 and the mother tongues were L1. But here we have many participants who also, who speak either their mother language or German or English. I mean, there are a lot of people who speak English with many people in Germany. So we had two basically languages, three languages to compare. So I grouped them into L1 and non-L1 languages. So I divided them by the number of domains, and each person received the score based on this calculation. So we see that we had 13 participants, and the scores were between 0 and 1. Actually, so this is normal that we have between 0 and 1. And we had three people who had 0 shifting scores, which means they basically did not use German in any domain of their lives. So these people basically one lesson that we can learn from this very first step for the next studies is that we explicitly ask people, what language do you speak your life partner? Because one criteria for attending this study was speaking German with the life partner, and people basically many people did not mention their partner in answering these questions. So when we ask, later I will show you, when we ask, for example, who do you refer to when you want to, I don't know, borrow money? In none of those questions, they said my partner. So because of that, we don't have information about that. Later, in the next studies, we should have a group of questions specifically for the partner in order to have a better analysis. But yes, Sophia.
Just a quick question, because
Yeah.
I remember that maybe some people also spoke English quite
Yeah.
frequently, even though that was not their first language.
Yes.
And also not German, the language we're interested in. So if they replied English in one of these categories, how does this affect the shifting score? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Yes. Some people had English as their native language, and some people had English as not their native language. So for those people who had English as their native language, so it was L1, so that's obvious. For those people who had English as not their native language, were grouped into non-LA languages. So because of this, because it was not just English. Some people had, were French native speakers, for example, but they were speaking German and Spanish with their friends in Germany. So that was, because of this, we have native and non-native languages, two groups of languages.
So essentially, the shifting score tells us how much they're shifting away from their native language, but it doesn't tell us how much they're shifting towards the dominant language in Germany.
Okay, yes. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. And so if we want to see the summary of this table in a graph, we can see that, okay, now 3 people with 0 and with 0 shifting scores, and you see the distribution of other participants in this continuum of 0 to 1 in the shifting score scale. And so we had 5 research questions, and these questions were focusing on different features.
Wahid, can you go back, please?
Yes.
So please explain us what you see in the bar diagram to the right?
Yes. So what we see is that
no. The question was for the students.
For students. Okay. Yes. Yes.
And then you can comment on it, Wahid.
Yeah, sure.
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
So please explain us the graph. What result does it show? The bar graph to your right. What are you learning with regard to language shifting away from their mother tongue?
Yes, Sophia, please.
I mean, maybe, so what we're seeing, like you explained, is the number of participants and then the shifting score in relation. So maybe we could say that there are like two poles. I don't know, because like around the middle value, assuming that around 0.5 is the middle value. If I'm using incorrect terms, I'm sorry. That there's only one speaker, but then towards the lowest end we have 3, and then towards the higher scores at least we have 2 each. So maybe it's a bit of a polar distribution. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, and go ahead, Noah.
I'm curious with the graph, how does length of time in Germany factor into it? Like, are the 4 people that are on the higher end of the graph with the higher shifting score, have they been here longer than those that have lower shifting scores?
I mean, that's a good question. We didn't look into this because it was not one of our questions, but it can be one of the questions that we can answer with our available data. So we have the data, and that's almost easy to look into that to see if there is a correlation between being a more language shifter and staying more longer in Germany.
Yeah, if you have a little bit time left at the end, we can do this right here maybe, and otherwise next time. I think it's a nice question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any comment from you, Vahid, to what Sophie said?
I mean, she was right. And what, I mean, my expectation was having more language shifters than, we have, if you forget about those 3 people who I believe could receive a different language shifting score, because, if we explicitly asked about the life partners, we could have at least they had one person to speak German with, and they wouldn't receive the 0-1. And in that case, I would say that yes, we had this increasing I don't know, shifting scores, because of our selection criteria, I think we could have more shifting scores, because we said people in the next study, we will see that we should, the participants should be isolated immigrants who speak German in the family, and German is they are not in a neighborhood that people speak their mother tongue. So with that, I expected having more people with higher shifting scores. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we tried to answer 5 research questions, and each question was focusing on one characteristic of either the whole network or the people in the network, so the actors in the network, and some basically very relevant question to all the network studies are, for example, question number 5, which is about the multiplexity of the network, or the structural features of the network, for example, about the size of the network, size of social networks. These are always in every social network study. And here, taking into account our whole research question, the whole research goal, that is, okay, what is the relationship between the structure and the content of the networks and language maintenance and shifting? Multiplexity should play a significant role. This is our prediction, but we should see later what happens. And frequency of contact is again one of those most common questions in network studies. But here we have other basically interesting questions. For example, question number 1 asks the geographical proximity. It's not, I mean, it's really not one of those questions that we can see in many studies, but very interesting, and we'll see what happens, what results we get from this. That ask the question in simple words was this, that okay, if a participant had more L1 speakers in his or her vicinity, does this affect her being a language maintainer or not? So having more L1 speakers around you would affect your being a language maintainer or not. And then if you forget about the physical distance, but if you are frequently in contact with L1 speakers, how this affect your language maintenance? And the next one, question number 3 was, okay, if what the ratio of the ratio of L1 and non-L1 speakers in your network. So if you have, for example, a network of 10 people and 9 of them are L1 speakers and only 1 of them is not is an L2 speaker or non-L1 speaker, how does this affect your language maintenance? And is there any difference that L1 speakers around you are your kins or not your kins, or are just other people? And the multiplexity question that, as I said at the beginning, says if you have more than one type of relationship with one alter, for example, with one L1 alter, does it affect your language maintenance more if compared to the situation that you only are related to other people in one way? So having more and stronger types of relationship with L1 speakers, I mean, if this kind of relationship affects your language maintenance or not. This is, I mean, these are the 5 different questions that based on these questions, we had 6 hypotheses based on the findings and the study of Stossel. In the first one, we said geographical proximity of L1 contacts positively influences language maintenance, such that participants with L1 contacts in closer geographical proximity will demonstrate higher levels of language maintenance. So yes.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
So what Vahid is right now doing is the following. He is, it's something interesting and important for techniques of scientific work. So first he showed the general research question, right? A general research question is essentially trying verbally to explain what the issue is about, right? What the question is about. And then he translates this research question, or he shows the implications of this research question for an empirically testable hypothesis. An empirically testable hypothesis means, for example, that if more A of A, then also more of B, or if more of A, then less of B, right? Or if A is the case, then B shouldn't be the case, right? So something that you can test, right? Test empirically in the sense that a hypothesis is either true, which means maintained, or false, which means rejected, right? So the difference between research question is that it invites to, and needs a larger discussion, and a hypothesis is something that has exactly 2 outcomes, true or false.
Yes. So our first hypothesis was this, that geographical proximity of L1 contacts positively influences language maintenance, which means participants with L1 contacts in closer geographical proximity will demonstrate higher levels of language maintenance. So they are positively related. The closer L1 contacts, the higher language maintenance that participants will have. Hypothesis number 2 says increased frequency of contact with L1 speakers is associated with higher levels of language maintenance, implying that participants who frequently interact with L1 speakers will maintain their language better. So again, more contact with L1 speakers will result in higher language maintaining. Number 3, a higher proportion of L1 speakers in a participant's primary network is positive. So before we go, primary and secondary networks, in one of the questions we asked, who are the most important people among those people that we named in your network? And the participants selected a couple of people as the most important people, and then we called them primary network. So we had the primary network of the most important people and the secondary network of other people in the network. So a higher proportion of L1 speakers in a participant's primary network is positively correlated with language maintenance, while a higher proportion of L2 speakers may correlate negatively with language maintenance. So if you have more L2 speakers in your primary, so if the most important people in your network are more L2 speakers, most probably you will be a language shifter. And number 4, kin within the network plays a significant role in language maintenance, with the presence of L2 kin family members being associated with lower levels of language maintenance. So if you have some kins, some family members who speak the target, the L2 language, and so the presence of such kins in your network would result in lower language maintenance, so higher language shifting. And number 5, there is a relationship between multiplexity and subnetworks, where alters in the primary network have a higher multiplexity. So the most important people are connected to you, are related to you in more than one way. So the closer the context, the more multiplexity those alters, those ties will have. And the last one is certain contents and activities are more prevalent within a specific subnetwork. So we use, what we do in primary network is different from what we do in the secondary network. This is basically the last hypothesis. So what we had, who were our participants? We said the participants should have this list of criteria, and they should, in short, be women who are married to or partnered with German native speakers, and they are relatively isolated immigrants in Germany. And German is not their native language. They should be highly educated. They had a specific range age and the minimum and maximum number of years of staying in Germany. We had this social network questionnaire that we asked 5 groups of questions. The first group of questions were about the participants themselves, about their age, the year that they arrived to Germany, and other questions that were about the ego herself. And then we had a part which was called the name generator. We asked who are the neighbors, schoolmates, colleagues and relatives and other people that you are in contact with, and you talk to them frequently, more than 5 minutes. And so so the person simply named those people, and in the case of relatives, they said what this person, how this person is related to you. For example, is the mother, brother, father, and other things. And then we asked some questions about the alters, so these people who were named here, and we had these 2 groups of questions that we said, what do you do? If you want one of these social exchange activities, to which of those people do you refer to? And if you want to do these activities, to whom do you refer to? And then As I said, we ask who are the most important people to see who is in the primary network. And at the end, we ask some questions about the answers, their language, the place of living, occupation, nationality, origin, and other things. So why did we ask them? We asked them to, the first group of questions were there to ask to understand how large is the network. This is the most important goal of these questions, and of course to see who are those people. And then the next group of questions were there to understand how a multiplex, the ties between ego and those alters are, and then who are in each subnetwork of primary and secondary, and at the end to understand what are the characteristics of those people and what kind of relationship, what by kind I mean the frequency of contact and the physical, the geographical proximity of them, for example, are between ego and those anchors. So we had these 4 purposes when we asked these 5 groups of questions. So the first group, the first group of questions was to understand what the network size of our egos are. As you see again, we have these 13 participants, and the network sizes were ranging from 1 person to 15 people. So 15 was the maximum because we only had space for 15 participants. So if we had more, maybe this person, for example, who had the maximum number of participants, who named the maximum number of participants, maybe named a couple of more names, but the range was between 1 and 15. And again, if you want to see the distribution of the number, the network size among participants, this is this almost bell-shaped graph that says, okay, most people, the most common network size was in the middle of this range of 0 to 15. And we had some people who had the minimum and the maximum number of network size.
This is a classic, approaching probably a classic Gaussian distribution, this probability distribution that with the most frequent ones towards the mean value, and the more you go to the extremes, the rarer the frequency.
Yes. So this is what we got from the name generator part of our questionnaire. And we, in the class, as you all saw, we try to visualize the networks. And as you see, there are some networks, like the networks of participant number 41 and 11, who are relatively large ones. Yes.
Okay, maybe from time to time we ask also some students to the question too. Yeah, but go ahead, Wahid. Maybe
Yeah, I just wanted to compare 2 different types. We had, for example, these 2, and these 2 networks. That this is a network. This is not a part of this one. So this is a separate network, and this is a separate network. So you see people are different, and they have different types of social relationship, and the participants are there. The distribution of the answers are different in different networks.
And as a question to the students, on the first glance, what is, according to you, the main difference between these 2 networks?
Just looking at them, I would assume that if we looked, the one on the left is going to have a lower shifting score than the one on the right, because they have a higher L1.
Okay. So that you are already making assumptions, right? So the one on the left has a much higher proportion of L1 speakers compared to non-L1 speakers, and that seems to be the contrary in the one to the right. Yeah. Very good.
Yes.
You can go on, Wahid.
Okay. I thought we were waiting for more comments. Yeah. Okay. So
there
yeah.
weren't any.
Yes.
But you can always interrupt us.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, as you see, the size of the network and the type of the relationships that people have affects the whole social network, the picture of the whole social network of each participants. And if you have not already seen that, so the colors here show what what the meaning of each color is, and what if I want to compare, if I want to show you all the networks. So we have 2 slides here. And a very important question that I have, about this, for comparing these networks is this. Let's have a quick look at all these 13 networks that we have. So let's just, open this one. The purple circles are the primary networks. The nodes in the purple circles are the people in the primary network. So the people who are the most important people in the networks of these people. If you just want to look at these graphs, what is the first thing that you can probably conclude from the type of the people who are inside the circles and outside the circles? Is there any difference do you see any difference between these people?
I think it may be related to the activities or the importance that these people have in this person's life. So I think, yeah, because some are closer to the circle.
Okay.
So maybe the people that are closer to the circle have so they hang out with you more or have a closer relationship with you.
Which circle do you mean? The purple circle or the central?
I'm checking the first one actually.
This one.
So yeah, the first one.
Okay.
So I can see that there are people closer to the circle. And there are people outside the circle. So I mean the people closer to the circle are closer to the person. So they do more activities together. So they are maybe like colleagues and they have more in common with the person who is being who we are looking here. And the people outside, you have less communication with, you don't do any activities together.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's my thought.
Okay, yeah. That's true because that can be true, but the distance between the alters and ego are based on their being in the primary or secondary network. So the people closer to the ego are the people who are now in the purple bigger circle, are the people who are inside who are the most important people of the ego, and people out of this circle are those people who are not very important. But we cannot see from these graphs that if they have stronger, a more multiplex tie with those people out of the circle or not. Maybe there is a person here out of this circle who is, as you said, the colleague and a friend, and they do a lot of other activities, but they are not, that person is not among the most important people in the life of this person. So we can't see this from this graph.
It's very, very nice, your visualizations that you did, Wahid, here, by the way.
Okay.
Thank you. No, I think we couldn't have this very beautiful overview of our study really without Wahid's big efforts that he did here now. But thanks to his efforts, looking at these 6 people here, the 6 egos, there is, I would say, one thing that you can, generalization that you can say. So there is something nearly systematic that you can observe visually.
I mean, especially if we go to the next slide. Oh, what happened? Yeah.
Yeah, even in the one before. Yeah,
okay.
Which one was it?
So this
Yes,
was
this one.
the first one, yeah, that we had, and the second one was other people.
Yeah, let's start with this one.
Okay.
So what can you observe here? Is there any something systematic according to you that distinguishes primary and secondary networks?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, go ahead.
Seems like generally the L2 speakers are more likely to not be in the primary network than L1 speakers.
Yeah, with one exception, namely.
Yeah, number 43.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
I am curious if number 43 is one of the ones with the higher shifting score.
With one of the higher shifting scores. Yeah, I can go back and check if, let's do it now to see if this person had a higher shift, number 43. No. Yes. Because, we should look at the domains and not the number of the people who speak one language. So this person speaks more L1 in more domains than L2. Yeah, exactly. So what I was looking for was this. We see more, let's go to the next slide because we also need this one. So we see more L1 speakers. So if you compare these one, I mean, there are some exceptions, of course, but if you look at all the 13 networks, you see more blue spots inside the purple circle than red spots, which means that the L1 speakers are more, or let's say like this, the people inside the primary networks are mostly L1 speakers. Yeah. Okay, so let's see if our observation is true or not. We have a distribution of.
Just one thing to Noah.
Yes.
So, of course, that's always I would do the same, to look then to see whether the prediction comes true for an individual. But it can always be that for the individual it doesn't hold, but nevertheless the tendency goes into this direction. So that's why we need to wait until we have the overall picture.
Yes. So yes, our observation was this: more L1 speakers in the primary network and more L2 speakers, more red spots out of this primary networking, I mean in the secondary network. So let's see what numbers say. On the left side that you have your primary network, you see, yes, 63% of alters are L1 speakers, and only 36% of the alters are non-L1 speakers. So they're English speakers or German speakers or other language speakers. But in the secondary score, secondary subnet, it's a network, we see the opposite. So most of the alters are non-L1 speakers. So which says that, okay, most, which says, people based on their L1, can be inside or outside the primary network, but we can't say that this is the result of that. But this is a relationship that we can find in the distribution of different speakers of different languages in these two networks. Yes.
Sophia.
Just to understand it correctly, was this calculated by just adding up all of the outros, or did you calculate this proportion for each network and then this is the kind of mean value? Or is that for an individual speaker? No,
this is for all the people, and this is the percentage of. So we said, I added all the L1 speakers, and the sum of all the L1 speakers and the sum of all the non-L1 speakers, and then divided them by the whole network size of all the people, and then calculated what proportion of that whole network of all the people are L1 speakers and what proportion are L2 speakers.
But it's actually a good point that Sophia raises, because she suggests that instead of calculating this independently of the individual, we should make the average value of the proportions of L1 to non-L1.
Mm-hmm.
The average value per speaker.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
We saw that there were some really large differences in network size.
Yes. That may skew the results. That's a very good point, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but again, we are taking into account the network size in calculating this. That what you said is, I would say, and also a nice approach. But we, when we divide, we didn't say that for example, we have 13 participants, and they, we didn't divide the number of L1s based on the number of participants. We said, okay, if we say this is a large network, and this large network has this size of 90 something, and out of these 90 something, let's say 50 people are L1 speakers and 40 people are L2 speakers. So again, we are taking into account the network size. But what you said could also be done to compare if you have a different result. I should do that. I will do that.
I think it's legitimate what Sophia says, because look, it's the very same question that occurs also in corpus linguistics when people are thinking about their data analysis. So you can either take, for example, the sum of one linguistic variant and divide it and take the sum of the other linguistic variant, right? And don't look at the individual speakers if you had different transcripts of interviews. Or you could look at the rates for each speaker, right? And then calculate the average of the rates.
Yes.
And the second approach is legitimate whenever, now in the case of corpora, whenever these interviews did not have the same length, because otherwise the one who spoke 2 hours has a much higher weight in the results than the one who spoke 10 minutes, right?
Yes.
And I think that her comment goes into the same direction. She wanted to say the one who just for whatever reason knew much more L1s, for example, much more persons, then that goes into the analysis with a higher rate, with a higher weight.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
True. Right. Yeah. So I will do this for the next session, and then maybe we can have a quick slide and comment on that for the next session. For this question and other questions that we can, or other issues that we can collect today. Okay. So this is what numbers say. And we can say that we have already answered a part of research question number 3 that said, okay, what is the distribution of L1 to L2 ratio in the network? So in the primary and secondary networks. We see this is the distribution. If we say this is true, the distribution of the ratio of L1 to L2 speakers in different networks. But we will come back to this question later. So this is the hard part. So the first question, the question number 1, would take quite the time. But if you understand this fully, I think the other questions would be very quick, and we can go through them quickly. So what was the first question? How the geographical proximity of contacts influence the language maintenance? So before we go to these questions, let's have a very quick review of the terms that we are going to use in this analysis. The first one is a variable. So I think we all know what a variable is, but a variable is a characteristic of something that we are measuring. So here, I wouldn't say what the variables here are, because I want to ask you what the variables are, but in this question. But a variable, we have in general, let's say we have 2 types of variables, a dependent variable and independent variable. The dependent variable is the variable that we gonna measure, and the independent variable is the variable that we want to see the effect of that variable on dependent variable. So an example is this. If you want to see the effect of age on second language learning, okay, so how for example, the increase in the age affects second language learning, we have 2 variables, one dependent variable and one independent variable. Which one is the dependent variable in your idea, and which one is the independent variable? Yes.
So I would say that the independent variable is the age.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also what we could control for in this setup. And then we see how second language learning depends on the age.
Yes. So the dependent variable is the language learning, second language learning, and the independent variable, so the variable that changes and want to see the effect of that on that one, and the other one is age. So we want to see what is the effect of age on second language learning. So this is independent, and language learning is the dependent, because it depends. Its value depends on that. And the next term that we're going to use is the correlation. So a correlation, by definition, is a statistical technique used to measure and describe the type and the strength of the relationship between 2 variables. It tells us whether and how strongly changes in one variable are associated with changes in another variable. So what basically correlation says is that if 2 variables are at all related to each other, and if yes, if that relationship is a strong relationship, and into which direction. So let's go to the next one. So if the relationship is a positive relationship, which means increase in one leads to increase in the other one, or negative, which is the opposite. So increase in one variable decreases the other variable, or there is no correlation between these 2 variables. So the increase and decrease in these variables are not related to each other. And so we have different correlation tests, and based on the type of data and the distribution of data, it's a long story, but we will have some examples in the next slides to see how the type and the distribution will affect the choice of correlation test and the sample size. So if we have a large sample or a small sample, and some other factors would influence our choice of the correlation test. Okay, now.
But Wahid, I have a
Yes.
suggestion. What do you think if we first show the results, and then, if we have time today, come back to the background?
Yes, that was the only slide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question was this. So how the geographical proximity of contacts influence the language maintenance. We had 3 steps to see what this effect is. The first step was data preparation. In the first step, we coded the responses of our participants into 5 different categories. So from 1 to 5, the higher score means the further distance that alter has with ego. So if a person lives in another country, that person gets the score of 5, and if they live in the same home, so they're partners, that alter receives the score of number 1. And we calculated the central tendency here, median, to actually to have 1 number for each participant for L1 speakers. And then this is the distribution of the different. I mean, the blue one is for L1 speakers, and the green one is for non-L1 speakers. As we see, most of the L1 speakers are in the further geographical positions. So 5 is living in another country, and they had a few other L1 speakers in different places in Germany. So in the same place, in the same city in Germany or in the neighborhood. But about the non-L2 speakers, there was only 1 non-L1 speaker who was not inside Germany among all the alters of all the people. And, you see we have them in different places inside Germany. So number 1 to 4. And this is, I mean, the step 2 is the visualization. So we have a scatter plot here of all the L1 speakers to see,
Excuse me, Wahid.
Yes.
Let's ask the students.
Okay. Yes.
Go to the visualization.
Yes.
Please explain us what you see. Yes, go ahead, Noah.
So I feel like this shows kind of what I would expect, at least with our top data, that the farther away the L1 contact is, the higher the shifting score is, as we can see with 3 people, and that 4 on median vicinity all have higher shifting scores.
Anything to comment on this, Wahid?
I mean, let me check if I understood correctly. You said that further the L1 speakers are, the higher shifting scores they have.
I mean, generally, I guess the ones that are the farthest away, there's less there, but in that 3 to 4 section.
Yeah, I mean, so let's see what we have in this plot. On the right side, we say, okay, the further distance, so distance from 1 to 5, I don't know, 2 to 5, and the language shifting scores from 0 to 1, but we didn't have more than 7.75. So here, as we go this way, so as the alters become geographically further from ego, the shifting score decreases, which means the further the L1 speakers are, the
less they shift.
The less they shift.
And that's exactly what Noah said, I think. Right?
Did you?
Did you? or did I misinterpret you?
I guess no, I didn't say that.
Okay.
I was more so looking at all the highest shifting score people.
You were looking at this spot.
So, yeah, okay. There are more higher scores, and those people happen to have lower L1 contact. But I understand when you look at the whole picture, that's not necessarily true.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is kind of opposite of what we would expect, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So, but this is the visualization. Let's see what the statistical.
Can you go one step back?
One step back.
One slide back.
Yes. Oh. So let's see.
One slide back, please.
Yeah, this one.
Yes.
Okay.
So okay, okay, thank you. That I just wanted to refresh my memory here. So what are we going to do with this surprising finding?
Yes. Yeah, this is also surprising to me. So the statistical, let's see what our test, the correlation test says. How to decide about which type of test we have. So we have different types of tests, but here we looked at our small sample size that we have. We had 13 participants. The type of data that we had, our data type is ordinal data, which means the higher number means a higher order, but the distance between the individual numbers are not necessarily the same. So the distance between 2 and 3 is not necessarily the same as the distance between 3 and 4, for example. And our data is not distributed normally. So based on this, Spearman's rank correlation was the best choice, and it has a very simple R script, which is just this line that we say, okay, calculate the correlation test. What is the method? Spearman. So this is, if you want to have another type of test, you just change this part of that, and you give the code the variable number 1 and variable number 2 and just the type of the test. And so we have the result gives us 2 numbers. What is the meaning of these numbers? So the first number, which is the correlation coefficient measure, this number here explains that measures the strength and direction of the association between the 2 variables. So, okay, so again, how do you understand the direction of a correlation from this number? How do you say this is, okay, I don't want to say the words, but how do you say that? How do you see the relationship, the direction of relationship between from this number?
So Wahid's question is essentially, this is a negative correlation. How do you read a negative correlation? Or to say differently, what's the difference between a negative and a positive correlation? Then you get it.
Yeah.
So a positive relation would have meant that the closer distance of L2 speakers would have led to a greater shifting, but we got a negative, which means that the further distance or the closer distance of L1 speakers would have actually led to a higher shifting.
Exactly. So it's not of the type the more X, the more Y, but it's the type the more X, the less Y. Right? This is a negative correlation. And this is exactly what we have. The more proximity of L1 speakers, the less language maintenance. And this is surprising.
But let's go back to the previous slide. This is the language shifting. yeah, which is opposite of language maintenance.
Okay.
yes,
But
yeah,
then the question should have been formulated differently. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So yeah, so the result is not opposite of what we expected. It's exactly what.
Yes,
I mean, yes, okay.
Finish your sentence.
Yeah, I thought you want to say, okay. So I mean, here I mean, if we had the language maintenance axis here, so the direction was this way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
So this was a misunderstanding that we jointly had. We looked at the title, right, on language maintenance, and the title was a conceptual title, but not the concept itself. The concept is not language maintenance, but it's language shifting. So we have to read the quantitative analysis as the more vicinity, the less shifting.
Yes, the less shifting.
I'm sorry.
The higher the L1 vicinity, the more L1 vicinity. So that's on the X bar. Then the less shifting occurs. So this indeed goes in the expected direction.
So I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused. I'm trying to understand, but the median vicinity, the numbers are counterintuitive in the sense that a higher number means more distance, right? So it's further away.
Yes.
But that would still mean that for the L1 speakers that are further away, or that have more L1 speakers that are far away, there is less shift, right? The shifting score decreases.
Yes.
And if the shifting decreases, that must mean that it's a higher maintenance score.
Yes.
Right? So we still have higher maintenance for the L1 speakers that are further away.
No, this is not the maintenance of L1 speakers. This is the maintenance of ego. So
yes, but the ego whose maintenance score is high in the sense that the shifting score is low.
Okay.
They still have their L1 speakers the furthest away. So it is the opposite of what we are expecting.
Okay, I get your point now. Okay, Vahid, so this is the point. So what Sophia is saying is that what you called vicinity score should be called distance score.
Yes.
Because the higher the value, the higher the distance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So we have to call it median distance of L1 contact. Median geographic distance. That's a very good point, Sophia. And Vahid, just for me now, because I got also confused now, just for me to understand. So Sophie's point was right? So that when on the x-axis, when it says 5, it means another country, and when it says 2, it means neighbor.
Yes.
Okay, but then this is not a vicinity score, this is a distance score.
Yes, right. I'm wondering if I got this from Stossel or I made it up, but I tried to stick to what Stossel as used in the paper, but you're right. I mean, changing vicinity to distance would make that much clearer.
Okay.
Yes.
But since there was a misunderstanding, I just want to make sure that the y-axis, what you call language shifting score, really means language shifting score, or is it in reality a language maintenance score?
No, it's language shifting score. So
okay, so the higher the value, the more they shift.
Yes.
Okay. With that being clarified, then we have to go back and actually Noah's very first comment that this is not as expected was totally at the point, namely the x-axis is the distance score, and what we are seeing here is the more distant the L1 contacts are, the less they shift, and the closer the L1 contacts are, the more they shift.
Right. Yeah. Then what Noah says is true. Right. This is not what we expected. So this is, what we expect. Yes, Noah?
I was just curious then. Of course, this is the unexpected because we would just naturally assume the opposite is true. Is it also unexpected because the original study found the opposite as well?
In the original study, she found that the more L1 speakers in the vicinity, the more language maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we have to be a little quicker because we have only
but
17 minutes.
it requires explanation.
Yes,
right?
yes. Yeah.
And also make it sure just the third time, going back to the data, that you really have the polarity, the direction.
Yeah, I
correct.
wrote it down. Yeah, that's
Okay.
Maybe there is a mistake somewhere.
When you send so that because you will send out the slides to the students this evening, and then then it's checked by then.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And the best is that we just add a sentence in the sense of the more this, so just what we said, right? Just that there's no misunderstanding.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, Sophia.
Can we look at it once more together on at the graph that we just saw?
Yes.
And is this? No, okay. So this is, I'm sorry. So each dot represents one ego, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I think this was already my question. Then I'm happy. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Can you go back another time, please?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean,
looking at this, just a comment. Looking at this, also what Wahid has written here, we should keep in mind that a correlation of minus 0.26 is really a weak correlation, right?
Yes.
Nevertheless, it goes into the wrong direction, and especially this requires some explanation. Yeah.
Yeah. I will look into the data again today.
Yeah.
And double check if I made a mistake somewhere, because I'm wondering if let's go to the next ones to see if we have the same trend, unexpected trend in the other ones too. Okay, so the same thing. I mean, that was for question number 1, the research question number 1. For question number 2, that we said, okay, how the frequency of contact with L1 speakers affect the language maintenance. So the same process, coding the data, visualizing, which is this. Again, I think we have to change all of the language maintenance. Don't look at this title. So let's say how the frequency of contact affects language shifting.
Yes. What's the point now?
Okay, so I just wanted to see if we see the opposite trend or not in this one. So here we have the more contact with L1 speakers we have, the less language shifting. So this is what we expected. So, but again, we should see if this is a statistically significant or not. In the statistical test, yes, Sophia?
Sorry,
Oh, it's not.
interrupting. So I signed up for group 1, and I think this was part of the group 1 question as well. So I looked at the Stessel paper again this morning, and actually I found that she wrote, and I'm quoting this, I have the paper open, there was no clear relationship between frequency of contact and language use.
Yes.
So I'm guessing even if this is insignificant, that would still be in line with her findings though, right?
Yes, yes, it is in line in the sense that we do not find a significant correlation between frequency of contact and language shift. Exactly.
Yeah, the trend is what we expected, but this is not significant, statistically significant as we see from the numbers. I will send you these slides and maybe you can, I mean, I have said here why this is not significant, but you see 0.1 is a very low number and the p-value is 0.4.
Yeah, and when
yes.
the trend is so low, it really means that there is no correlation. So we should not interpret a low trend. It just means it's created by chance.
Yes. And so going back to question number 3 that we partly responded was, okay, how L1 and non-L1 or how L1 and L2 speakers are distributed in primary and secondary networks, that we saw that, okay, in the primary network, we have more L1 speakers, and in the secondary network, we have more L2 speakers. The second part of the question was how this distribution in the primary and secondary network correlates with language maintenance. So we have this ratio of L1 to non-L1 in primary subnet network, so which says, okay, the more ratio of L1 to L2.
No, not the more, the higher the ratio.
Yes, the higher the ratio of L1 to non-L1 alters we have in networks, the less language shifting we will see in the egos. So, which is again what we expected, but we should see if this is statistically significant or not. But again, looking at the numbers, we see that the result is not significant, is not statistically significant. So very similar to the previous numbers that we had for the previous question. And for N2 speakers, I'm sorry, so for in the secondary network, so L1 to non-L1 speakers in the secondary network, we see a kind of better trend, but it's still not significant.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One question, did you do here what Sophia suggested, namely that you looked at the individual ratio? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, so for none of them, we can see a significant correlation. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And before answering question number 4, we go to question number 5, the how multiplexity is in relation with language shifting. And just a very quick review, multiplexity was calculated like this, that each yes would receive score 1 and no score 0. So this is the whole number of L1 and L2 speakers. So, for example, all the people 50 times refer to L1 speakers for getting advice, but 43 times to for L2 speakers. So this is the whole distribution of different content and activities that the alters had, and this is this kind of visualizes the table that we have on the left side. That here we see that advice and personal matters are the most mentioned activities and content that our participants mentioned, and almost in all of them except sport, L1 speakers were referred to more than L2 speakers, which makes sense. I think that you play sport, taking into account that most of the L1 speakers are not in the closer proximity, so playing sport with a person who is not close to you doesn't make sense. And the activity distribution in primary and secondary network is also different. So we see that in the primary network, L1 speakers are referred to for all of them except sport, as we saw before. And in the secondary network, non-L1 speakers, so L2 speakers were the people who almost except in all of them except this one, for financial crisis that people would refer to were the people who were most mentioned as the people who the ego would refer to for getting this help or doing this activity with. And so what Stossel was saying, that okay, there is a difference between the type of activity and the content of primary network and the secondary network, and as we see that this is true, and for then if the next question, the next part of the question number 5 was that if primary and secondary networks are different in so let me see if in terms of multiplexity score. So if there is a difference between the multiplexity of people in the primary network and the secondary network. So again, I calculated the mean, median, and we know the range is between 1 and 8 in the multiplexity. And what we have in this visualization is a box plot that shows that people in the primary network in general have a higher multiplexity score than the alters in the secondary score. And the statistical test has, because of these reasons, I used U-test, which says that the result is very significant, and because you see the p-value, that there is no way that this result is because of chance. So yes, there is a difference between primary and secondary network in terms of multiplexity. Looking at the time. But this, the next question was, how does the multiplexity of L1 speakers affect the language shifting and language maintenance? The graph, because the data, is the same data that we used in the previous slide. The graph is this, that says, okay, the more multiplex L1 speakers are, the less language shifting we will have, which again makes sense. And the statistical analysis also confirms that there is a moderate negative correlation between them, because 0.3 is not, again, a very high number, but this is
highly significant.
Highly
this is very
significant.
interesting. This is very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Showing somehow that multiplexity is really here an important aspect.
Yes.
That looking at our data, it somehow confirms that we have to look at the details of the network analysis to understand language maintenance.
Exactly. And what is kind of not what I expected. I said, okay, let's see how the multiplexity of all the people, no matter if they are L1 or not non-L1 speakers, affect the language shifting. And it turned out that somehow the multiplexity and language shifting have a negative correlation. But I mean, no matter, so it means the more multiplex people that you have in your network, the less language shifter you are. But the correlation is not really significant, is not high, and is not statistically significant.
That's a question of debate, by the way.
Okay.
Just as my last comment, because since our sample is small, with 10 individuals, right?
Yes.
There are good reasons to say that an alpha error level of 5% is too restrictive.
Yes.
So we could technically saying, because it would then mean that the beta level would be way too high. So many people with these small samples go to an alpha level of 10%.
Yes.
And then it would also be considered as significant.
Significant, yes. I also mentioned this p-value of 0.1 in the first slide, but because we passed it very quickly. But again, in all other ones, even if we move that to 0.1, the result doesn't change. But in this case, yes, that would change the results into significant, statistically significant.
Excuse me, just one point. Since I need to be in time in a meeting at 3:30, you guys can stay for a couple of minutes with Vahid. So Vahid will send you just an updated slides having checked also whether the metrics were indeed coded in the right direction. I believe it was, because it's nothing unusual in research that you're surprised by the findings. And maybe, Vahid, under each of these tests, you can also just write a sentence, and then you could also show that contrary to expectations, the findings show that
exactly.
blah, blah, blah.
I mean, because you're leaving at the end, I have this summary of all the findings, but
Perfect.
I will add one column to for the comments and say if it was what we expected or not.
And please also discuss with them the groupings, that we have the right groupings. See you all next time for our last session. You are still host, Vahid. Now, when I go out, you're still in.
Let me see if I'm a host.
Yes, you are.
Yes, I'm a host. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Goodbye. Okay, sorry, Sophia, you had a question, right? No?
Yes, I really don't want to drag this out for everyone involved. I'm really sorry. I was just wondering if we find that there is actually this correlation that you showed with the overall multiplexity. We wanted to make an argument that the multiplexity of the ties to L1 speakers actually affects language shift, but then we just see that an overall higher multiplexity affects language shift. Would that weaken our argument?
No. I would say no, because the reason is that first, no, you can not really compare this trend with that trend. So this is one point. The other one is that I think we can kind of, if we think more about that, we can kind of confirm the idea that, if we accept that actually higher multiplexity means stronger ties, we can kind of go back to the idea of the power of weak ties, right? So you remember that we said, okay, having more, people can benefit more from weak ties always, in the networks. And if we say that language maintenance is something that we are looking to, we are trying to save, so we are trying to have higher language maintenance, having more having more weaker alters, ties with alters, would also confirm that, okay, also, I mean, no matter if the weak alters are L1 or L2 speakers, the point is that if most of the alters in a network are weak ties, then we have a better result. We can benefit that in maintaining our language. But this is something that we should think more about to see if we find any relationship, because in this case, maybe it makes more sense to also calculate how the multiplexity of L2 speakers affect the language maintenance and shifting. And then by having the three of them, L1, L2, and the overall multiplexity scores and the relationship with language shifting, maybe we can have a better understanding of what is going on. But I wouldn't say that, no, this is actually nullifying the previous result that we had. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for explaining.
Yeah, and so we don't have many.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
just for next week or for Tuesday, basically, we prepare each group a very small presentation that relates or puts your results into relation to Stössel's findings.
Stössel's findings, and if you find any points from the previous literature that we read in the class that you can add to the points, you can also add this to the presentation. So your presentation should basically be more than what I just said here. You should do the comparisons in more detail and provide more theoretical, probably, background of what we are looking for here, based on the Stossel, mostly based on the Stossel, and actually having a more detailed comparison of our findings and those findings.
And may we use your visualizations?
Sure, I will put all of the visualizations in a folder on Ilias, because otherwise you don't have them, right? And then you can, everybody can use them. I will explain all of this in an email in 1 hour. And then if you had any questions, now I would say that let's, for just 10 seconds, finish what we have here, and then I will come back to the next session. So the statistical analysis here says that, okay, there is a very weak relationship. You know, I don't know, I'm not sure if you really got how to interpret this number, but just, know that this number, this number can range from -1 to +1. And no matter if it is minus or plus, but the further that number from 0 is, the higher correlation we have. Okay, so here the correlation is only 1, 0.1. It is very far from 1.0. So we see that there is a very weak correlation, and it is marginally significant, but the correlation is very weak. And the last point in the analysis was how the presence of kins in the geographical proximity affects the language maintenance. And the result is that we don't know. Because you see, most of the kins are not in the, they are not distributed even close to normal distribution. So we have only one kin in all the people in the in Germany and in the same home, but the other people are either other parts of Germany or not in Germany. So how can we compare something with nothing? And this is not a valid comparison. So the result is very few kins. This is what exactly Stossel had. So we don't know what the presence of kins in the vicinity has on the language maintenance. This is all and the results that we had. Okay, so let's now go back to the groups. So there's a problem here. there, I mean the groups, 6 people, as I saw, have joined group number 1, and others have not really joined evenly into other groups. So let me stop recording.